everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins production diary. And this week we're just going to go one day at a time. It's Monday afternoon. I'm waiting on my first students to show up. And today in the shop, what I got accomplished was I spent a long time with this thing doing the final sandings before I shoot the final satin coat on this. This is a left-handed Country Boy, F-style Country Boy. And so it is done. All the final coats are put on it now. And it hangs with this other left-handed R5 Country Boy. And now I have two mandolins that are ready for the hardware once they cure out, and the strings and that sort of thing. Also, I went into the other room and I worked some on this A-style Country Boy. I glued the fretboard extender on that I made last week, and I did that first thing this morning. And the last thing I've done here, hopefully just before my students show up, is to glue the truss rod in with the little wooden overlay that goes over top of the truss rod, so that tomorrow one of the first things I can do will be sand all this down and clean everything up and put the fretboard on this mandolin. So that'll be something we look forward to doing tomorrow. For right now, I want to close off Monday's video and wait for my students. It is Tuesday morning, and I'm getting ready to glue this fretboard on this mandolin. I have my fretboard gluing machine or jig right over here. I'm going to pull it out here and show it to you. Let's start with the part that actually holds the mandolin. The fretboard will lay in this little tray, and these things will clamp down on the fretboard and the neck part right here, like this. So everything will be lined up side to side. Then each of these bars right here has a master screw in the middle, and then two separate screws on the outside to deliver downward pressure. There are actually three of these things. They slide on the track, so I can do a mandolin, or I can do guitars or mandocellos or anything like that. So I've designed the machine so that it could handle a variety of instruments. And here's a different angle of one of those slider trays. You see it's capable of moving this way. This main handle here takes care of the main shaft, and then these can be turned with the wrench, or I actually have a little thing that I made out of a socket to twist with the faucet handle on it, actually. I also have some little U-shaped wooden pieces that I have put some leather padding on them, and those can go onto the neck like this, right underneath these things, which are the feet for the clamps, and they too are padded out, but that'll come right down. Press down on that, press down on the neck, and apply pressure to the fretboard on the very bottom. And so, when everything's working the way it's supposed to, the fretboard is clamped down with nice even pressure all the way down. These things right here keep it from sliding this way, and the clamps press everything together, and the system works wonderfully. And here's a shot of this whole jig from the floor all the way to the top of it. So now I'm going to take this mandolin out of this jig, spread glue the fretboard on for real. And here's the final product. The mandolin has got its fretboard glued on. We'll take it out of the clamps tomorrow and maybe piddle with it a little bit and straighten up a few things and do some sanding and glue the peg head overlay on it. And that will probably be the, in fact it indeed will be the last thing that gets glued on before we clean it up for good and shoot the finish on it. So that'll happen tomorrow on Wednesday. It is now Wednesday, and I have taken this A-style out of that fretboard gluing jig, took it in the other room, cleaned up all of the nastiness on the neck, got it sized down pretty much to where I want it to be a final sizing, left it at 80 grit paper, brought it in here and glued on a rosewood peg head overlay, which is what I'm doing right now, and I was just cleaning up the glue squeeze out, and I'll let you take a look at it. I have a couple of wedges right there on the corners just to make sure that everything gets down where it's supposed to be. And these prop bar sticks, they just put the pressure from the top bed or the top plate all the way down onto the gluing, the two pieces that we want to have glued together. And when we take that out tomorrow, that peg head overlay will be nice and glued on and clean, and all we have to do is trim it up and it'll be ready to move on to the next step, which will be on this particular mandolin, getting it ready to shoot finish. So obviously that's all I can do to mandolin number 3 today, and it is still well before lunchtime. So I'm going to go over and pick mandolin number 4, see what needs to be done to it. If I can do that today, then I'll just move on to mandolin number 5, and we'll come back and pick up on mandolin number 3 tomorrow. But like I said, right now we're going to go for mandolin number 4. Mandolin number 4, much like mandolin number 3, is another A style. Also like number 3, it has 3-ply binding, except mandolin number 3 is cream, black and white inner binding, and cream outer binding, and this one is tortoise outer binding. So that's a little bit different deal. This one is pretty good shape, except for the back needs to be brought down and cleaned up and brought to its final dimensions. The heel button here has not been carved at all, and so the next step that I normally take from this point is to clean up those things, clean the heel, probably take things down to 80 or 100 grit on around the sides and the back of the peg head and that sort of thing. Just kind of clean it up a little bit more before we go on to the fretboard extender and the truss rod and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm going to do probably for the rest of the day, is clean this thing up. And if I get that far, I'll go ahead and start the fretboard extender, and if not, well, I'll almost certainly get to it tomorrow. But this will probably take the rest of the day, and if I do get far enough along, hey, I got number 5 waiting right here. I can work on it too. Now the back of number 4 is cleaned up, shaped exactly the way I want it to be. It's been sanded down from 60 grit paper down to 80, down to 100 grit paper now. And so the very next step would be the finish prep paper, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to take this mandolin into the other room, clean the sides up down to 100 grit paper, and carve the heel button and everything here. None of that's been taken care of. In the back of the peg head, and then we'll worry about trying to get the fretboard extender on. But first, sides, heel button, back of peg head. All right, we've now got the top cleaned off. The sides are cleaned down to somewhere between 80 and 100 grit. The back is all good and clean and shaped and everything. The back of the peg head is clean. I have chosen, because of the inner stripe on this one, which is a little, this is going to be finished as a country boy, but this is going to be a little bit of an extra country boy because of the stripe. I've chosen a fretboard that has the usually they're squared off country boys, but this one's got the little Florida extension on it. And so the fretboard is picked out for this instrument. It's time to go line everything up here this way and start the fretboard extender. So I'm going to carry it in the other room to do that. I like to go ahead and stand and shoot finish on the bottom of these fretboard extenders because it's hard, once they're glued on, it's really hard to do anything with them. And the fretboard overhangs them just a little bit, so it's real hard to clean up in there. So this one has been shaped, fitted, and it's just ready basically to glue on. But I stop at this point, shoot some finish on it, and clean it up, and it's got enough finish on it to be able to sand all that finish smooth tomorrow and glue it on tomorrow. So that's pretty much it for Wednesday. I'll let you know what happens on Thursday. I have here mandolin number 3. It is the A style that I glued the peg head overlay on yesterday, and there's just a few jobs left to complete before we can start the staining and finishing process. And number 1 of those jobs is, of course, to clean and trim this peg head overlay. And it's already got holes drilled in the peg head itself, but with the peg head overlay glued on, then those holes are not there anymore. So we're going to have to go from the back and re-drill and reset these holes in the overlay material. Like I said, trim it off. And then of course it doesn't have any frets in it, so we're going to have to level the fretboard. And obviously I've been arching fretboards for several years now, so we're going to put the arch in it and frets. And by the time I've got that done, then this thing should just be ready for pretty much whatever final tweaking, sanding, setting the tailpiece hole and the little handle that I put in them to shoot finish with. And this thing will be pretty much ready to go, tape up the binding and all like that. So that's going to take pretty much the rest of the day, and may actually take up all of the rest of the day. But I will, before the day's over with, take enough time to glue this fretboard extender on the other mandolin that I got this thing ready for yesterday. So that's going to be my all day Thursday will be dealing with this and that little job, I'm sure. And if there is any free time at the end, I'll pick the next mandolin out of the next box. But I just about bet money there's not going to be. Well, I have spent pretty much the whole day with this A model, and I've gotten everything I wanted to do done. It is pretty much everything is taken care of. This part right here is all cleaned up and pretty. The frets are installed. Everything's been pretty much sanded down to at least 100, and in some cases 220 grit. So by this time tomorrow, we really should have color and the first coats of finish on this thing. But it's just now a few minutes before quitting time, so I'm going to take this fretboard extender and pull the tape off of it and clean it up and everything, and glue that onto the mandolin that we talked about earlier. And that is going to be pretty much the end of Thursday's labors. And indeed, I did glue that fretboard extender on yesterday. So for today's two jobs, I guess, I'm going to try to get color and the first coats finish on this thing. It's mostly cleaned up and shaped. It just needs to have that final 220 to make sure that there are no scratches in it and all like that. We need to set the handle in and tape the binding up and put stuff in the F-holes to keep the spray finish from going down in. But basically we have a mandolin here that just needs to be tweaked out and be ready to be finished. And then if there's any time left over, which I'm sure there will be today, I will go in there and start with the truss rod on that mandolin that we glued the fretboard extender on yesterday. So. Okay, this mandolin has now been sanded as best I know how down to 220 grit sandpaper. I've gotten out every scratch that I could possibly find. I've twisted the lights around and looked at it from several different angles. And so I've got that done. Now what I'm going to do is raise the grain. I'm going to take a wet rag, wipe it all over liberally with water, just going to lay it to it. And the whole idea is if there's any bottom of the scratches, wood fiber compression, a place that has been knocked or hit maybe at some point in its construction, any place that might have some compressed grain, this water is going to soak into that wood surface, swell that grain back out. And quite often after you do that, then you go back and you'll see some sanding scratches that in spite of your best efforts, you missed. And so the whole point is to get everything out, and when you raise the grain, let it dry, sand it again, then you've really done about all you can do. So it's just before lunch. I'm going to soak this thing down, hang it up, and go eat. And when I come back, we should be able to do the final sanding and tape it up and put some stain and stuff on it. Okay, this is the end of the day check-in and also the end of the week, of course. I didn't get everything done I wanted to get done. I did get the mandolin final sanded off, 220 grit everywhere, got the handle put in, got the fretboard taped up, and so we're pretty much good to go and ready to put stain on it. But not too long after I got all that taken care of, I got called away on family business. I think I mentioned it in one of the earlier videos. My mom's car is broken. We're trying to get that fixed. And so one thing leads to another, and I didn't get back here till well after quitting time. And so this will just have to wait until next week. So that'll be something to look forward to. You can come back and check with me next week on the next episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Production Diary and see what color we make this thing. And I hope to see you then. Thank you so very much for watching till the very end, and we'll see you in future episodes. Bye.